What's going on, everybody? It is Joe back again talking about the Kansas State Wildcats, and I am here to talk about three guys I like. Even though the portal is starting to wind down, it's getting a little bit later in the cycle, I've got three people on my mind that I want to talk to you about today, especially with a couple of recent developments and visit situations. So, before we get into things here, let me say thank you guys so much for all the support. If you're interested in subscribing, I do make K-State content just about every other day, every couple of days, talking about different updates in the portal. When football season gets here, we'll get a little bit more football-centric. But as of right now, if you're interested in subscribing, it helps me out immensely, and I'm so appreciative of each and every comment, like, share, whatever you guys do. It means a ton to see the interaction. Now, with all that out of the way, we've got three dudes to focus on here, and a couple there's been some rumblings about, and one there isn't a ton of people linked to him yet, because it was such a fresh addition to the portal, but we're going to talk about it today, with the first guy on the slate being Rutgers guard Paul Mulcahy. Now, his name's a little bit tough. The Paul and the Mall kind of conflict, so I've decided the nickname Paul Mall based off the rapper Paul Wall. You guys can run with that if you want it. If not, whatever. But Paul Mulcahy, he's a really good player, and the big thing to note about him, he stands 6'7" at the point guard position. And while he's not necessarily a ball-handling dominant guard, he can still dribble the rock, but he reminds me a lot of a Christian Brown at Kansas or a Kevin Huerter type player. And not just because they're tall white guys that can shoot, they're really capable in a couple of different ways and have that big play factor. Mulcahy fits that description, and I think he'd be a great player in Manhattan. And just in case you want to link to K-State as to why this could happen, K-State is one of 4 teams that have already reached out to Mulcahy and to Rutgers to see what the situation is. However, the bad news portion of it, because there seems to always be bad news in the transfer portal right now, we're joined by West Virginia, Kentucky, and Michigan. The same 3 that have reached out to Olivier Kamwa, Arthur Kaluma, a couple of guys like that. We've got a lot of competition amongst those 4 specific schools. However, there's one thing that I like about this player. There's a lot of reports going around saying that this is not an NIL deal situation. Like, it's not NIL-centric. That's not the reason that he's leaving the college. And while that doesn't necessarily mean a ton, K-State has gotten kicked and beat repeatedly by NIL. I mean, I don't have to remind you guys. We all know how it's been this offseason. But if that's the case, like, similar to Tyler Perry, if you saw it, shout out to John Kurtz, 3 Mile Podcast, Coleman Beck, Derek Young, that episode where they had Tyler Perry on the pod, he then mentioned, like, I didn't even consider NIL. I wasn't even worried about that. And, obviously there's probably a degree of truth to that, as well as, there's probably some behind-the-scenes things going on, but, like, a lot of players don't have that focus of, I have to get the most money right now. Tyler Perry is one of those guys. Is Paul Mulcahy? Odds are it seems that way, but we've also been wrong in the past. I know I mentioned in the last video, I am 1 for 11 in the portal so far. I'm hoping to change it with these 3. I hope we get any of the 3. 2 and 14 is a lot better than 1 and 14, while it doesn't sound that way. It would be massive for us to land any of the 3 I'm going to talk about today. His stats here, just to give you an idea, 8.3 points per game, not a giant scorer, but has some production, 3.6 rebounds per game, and almost 5 assists per game on 41% shooting from the field. He can shoot the 3-ball. He shot around 38-37% last season from 3. He's a natural player, and I think in a Jerome Tang offense, this dude could thrive. He'd be a certified dude, for sure. I would love to see him in Manhattan, and I do feel pretty good about Mulcahy choosing the Wildcats. We'll see what happens. However, we've got another player up. This is one that I saw today, and I am all in on. And while I don't know if it'll happen, let me get this out of the way now. Is it likely? No. Is it possible? Yes, entirely. The player that I'm looking at, Louisiana forward Jordan Brown. If you've heard the name Jordan Brown, this dude is an absolute stud, one of the best players immediately in the portal. The guy averaged 20 and 10 at Louisiana. And while he's coming off a couple of different programs, he played at both Arizona and Nevada. He's been productive at both. Listen to the man's stats here, just to give you an idea of where we're at with the player. He stands 6'11", 225, not the biggest in stature, but very tall, very athletic. His stats here, how about 19.3 points per game last season? And just in case it's not enough, 8.6 rebounds per game. The guy's basically averaging 20 and 10 last season. That's incredible. On 57% shooting, he's got some athleticism in the low block, and he also has a jumper. Like, he can step out and shoot. He can pass. He's averaging 1.8 assists per game, which is more than most big men, I would say. Like, the dude can play. I mean, you're looking through the last couple of games, he had 28, 16, 18, 16, and these are against good teams. Like, he's playing decent teams, even though he's at Louisiana. This dude has a lot of upside. He entered the portal today as a grad transfer. Let me walk you through his 247 Sports page, because that is something we don't do enough. Listen, this is a couple of years ago. Let me walk you through his 247 Sports page. He was in the class of 2018. Coming out of high school, the 16th best player in the country. 16th. There's 15 better players than him. The 4th best power forward in the country, and the best player in the state of California. That is not easy to do. Just in case you didn't know, let's take a look at the 3 dudes that are better than him. Now, I'm going to be honest, 2 of these guys I'm unfamiliar with. How about the name Zion Williamson? And while that name has been Not linked to some great stuff as of late. If you've seen some Twitter, interesting conversation going on with Zion, he's in the midst of some stuff. However, that has nothing to do with his on-the-court stuff. The dude is one of the most physically gifted and talented prospects of all time in college basketball. Zion Williamson definitely was up there for Duke and was a one and done, obviously, number 1 overall pick. Great player. However, this dude could compete with that. He's ahead of Naz Reid, Reggie Perry, Joey Hauser, who we saw at Michigan State actually recently, the Hauser brothers, Sharif O'Neal, Shaq's son. He's ahead of that guy. Jerome Hunter. I mean, there's good dudes on this list that you see and you're like, oh my gosh, this dude can play. If he found his way to K-State, that'd be incredible. There is something that I'm a little bit worried about with this guy. And once again, while it's possible that we do land him, I'm not going to say it's likely. When you average 20 and 10, NIL is going to be screaming your name. Someone's going to offer you $250,000. They're going to offer you a bag. And I don't know that forward is our most needed position. While I don't think we're really weak at any position, to say the least, I think we're a little bit more inclined to land like a small forward, or we're more inclined to land a guard than we are, a big center or a big forward. I think it'd be incredible to have him and Tomlin at the 4 and 5. That'd be unbelievable. Then you slide a guy in like the 6-7 guard we talked about earlier, or you slide in, a couple of different people in that third spot. There's a bunch of guys on the roster that could fill that spot. I think it's possible that this lineup is really, really great. However, it's going to be an absolute battle for Jordan Brown. The third and final player. We've talked about him on this channel already. We talked about him in the last video I posted. Arthur Kaluma. While I did detail a situation and I was semi-right, I would say, it's not done yet by any means, there was a new detail that broke, and you saw it on Twitter. Shout out Derek Young for leaking this as well. He is on an official tour to Manhattan right now. And I saw a couple days ago, I think it was yesterday actually, not that long ago, but we saw that, okay, he's going to tour Kentucky. I was wrong. I mentioned that he already had toured Kentucky. I don't think he had. I blurred players up. There's 3 players that are all in a similar situation. That one's on me. He's going to tour Kentucky next week. If Arthur Kaluma comes to K-State, falls in love with Manhattan, and while I don't think it's not very common for us to get somebody to tour and then immediately commit. Like, you saw guys to go to K-State and then still go on other tours. So either way, whatever it is, we're leaving something to be desired for these guys, most likely NIL related. But if you get a guy that just doesn't care about NIL and is ready to go, Kaluma could commit as early as tomorrow if you really wanted to see it. I don't think it's likely we see it, but it is possible. If Arthur Kaluma comes to K-State and then you get either of the other 2 guys I mentioned here, the team's all the way back. Even without either of the other 2, if you get Kaluma, you get Tyler Perry in the portal, that's a great offseason. It really is. I think it's entirely possible we get these guys. Jordan Brown's probably the farthest stretch here, but we'll have to see how it plays out. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Once again, if you're interested in subscribing, we're giving away a free lavender quarter zip at 1,000 subs to one of the subscribers, someone who comments on the video when that drops. If you're interested in getting your hands on that, go ahead and consider subscribing.